Here you see the wind god up here, who is in a sense reducing her to the basic human condition in the face of a god who will take away your culture or recreate your culture. Next slide. There's this amazing image of an earthquake where it looks like these two images, these two individuals have fallen into the earth. Could these be the hero twins of the Maya as well? This crack in the map. Next slide. Sacrificial images where sacrifices do take place. Next slide. Here's another scene. Here's the original. Next slide. And what you have here are these two women who were sacrificed. Some women were sacrificed in the previous scene. Well, the women don't take it. And here you see them carrying the heads toward a corral where they're the heads of a number of other animals and so forth, because they're not going to take that. But you also have these sacred bundles. Along the way, they open their sacred bundles. They open their sacred bundles. Next slide. I like this scene in particular because this shows that they had arguments along the way. We call it red hot words. See, this guy over here is having red hot words with this one, and he's giving gestures, and they split up, and one group goes along here, one group goes along there, but they all end up together at the city. Next slide. And there they are at Cholula, the city of changes. Next slide. There's the left side of the map. Look at the right side of the map. Next slide. So over here, now, what I'm really trying to tell you in sum is, if you grow up in this country and you go to school, at some point you will learn about those cultures that are superior, that have epics. They have epic stories. You will read the Aeneid, or the Iliad, or the Odyssey, and you will learn that these great Mediterranean cultures, these were superior because they had epic stories, and they are amazing stories. This document shows you that these ancient people of Mexico had epics. If you were to take a storyteller who knew the images and the names and what's going on in this, and have that storyteller recite it to you, it would be longer than the Iliad or the Odyssey, because this was a great epic story of Mexico, about a place of origins, about a migration to the city, competition, cooperation, mothers who protect and lead people, males who farm and hunt, all of the kinds of things that take place in any culture that culture has to do if it's going to survive and thrive in the future. Take a look at the road. All of a sudden the road is a great circumambulation of this territory. This is down by Oaxaca. Anybody here from Oaxaca? Got any Oaxacan people from Oaxaca? We got some Oaxaca people. This is your town, territory. That's Veracruz up there in that corner. Next slide. And along the way, there's all kinds of events where they hunt together. Next slide. This is an important image, especially for the artists in the room. This is the tree of paradise. This is the sacred tree. It's called the malinali. This tree here, whenever you see this image of a double tree like this means that they conceived of it as the opening to paradise. This was the portal all the way back to the origins of the world. And here you see it in a snowfield. So they're also talking about passages to paradise. Next slide. Next slide. Let's just go through this. Well, I like this one a lot because each of these places is a town. And this is the town of Chismes. You see the area, this is the rumor town. These are the Chisme people. So they said, the people that live right there next to the bend in the road, see the ears up there? This is the Chisme people because they have these little ears of little mice that live in the wall. So they always said, well, the mice live in the wall and they're listening to you. Be careful what you say. So they said, well, this is Chisme town over here. This is Tlaloc town. You have musical instruments. Next slide. Amaranth. Next slide. Go ahead, next slide. This is going to be the last image I'm going to talk about here. The other thing that's so important in terms of what Father Elizondo has taught us is that it's not only that the future is mestizo in terms of cultural mixtures, it's that the past was mestizo too, including in the United States. One of the things that I teach and am involved in at Harvard is a series of debates with people like Samuel Huntington and also my African American brothers and sisters. And what I say to them is, W.B. Du Bois was right when he said that the story of the 20th century was the story of the color line. He said the story of the 20th century was the story about the division between the black people and the white people. And what I say to them is, yeah, well, that's only part of the story of the 20th century. And that's not the story of the 21st century, because the story that's really been going on all along is race mixture. And when you don't talk about race mixture, you leave out one of the most important parts of human society and human history, and that is the way we love each other and have sexual, romantic, caring relationships with one another. And one of the things that this map shows and affirms, and one of the things our history shows, is that there's been this race mixture going on all the time. It just hasn't found a place of legitimate expression in the mainstream. And that's one of the other things that I think is going to change with the Latino movement and the Latino vote, because people are going to have to face up to the fact that there's been all this loving going on, there's been all this exchanging going on. It's not just that the future is mestizo, the past is mestizo too. I love this image. I love this image because on this map, which was painted in 1542, 20 years after the Spaniards have come, and you can be sure that some of the artists were already Catholics, they were already Christians, they were already learning that. But when they paint the story of their community, there's not a single Spaniard on the map, but there are 2 Catholic churches. And not only are there 2 Catholic churches, they put the Catholic Church next to an indigenous shrine. In historical fact, that could never have happened, because when the Catholics came in, what they did is they tore down these shrines and used these shrines to build their own Catholic churches. But the artists, you know, the Esther Hernandezes of the day, what they did is they said, well, you may have torn down the building, but our people are mixing the religions. We are becoming Christian, but we are also doing it in a way that we can affirm our own indigenous religious identity. That's the message to me of this particular story. A story that is then and a story that is now. Next slide. This is in, where are you? In Cuauhtinchan, near Puebla. Near Puebla, yeah, Cuauhtinchan. So there you have the second story. I told them, next slide. These marriages take place. This is my point. This was out of... So here's a marriage of women who've come from Cuauhtinchan down to Oaxaca. They've crossed the road, a different ethnic group, and they're being married here. Here are the priests over here, creating this nueva raza, these new people in their own time. Next slide. Next slide. Next slide. Okay. So those were 2 of the stories I told them at the Corporation for Public Broadcasting. And when they came to me and said, you want to do a show? I said, no, I want to work with a group of people, artists, writers, musicians. And we want to come to the community like you and say, this is some of our ideas. We'd like to know what you think. We'd like to know your input into how to take an ancient story of origins, of migration, of inter-ethnic marriages, of carrying your sacred bundles, of honoring the women leaders who come and found new communities and put together the different religious traditions so that they can live together in some sort of creative way. That's the kind of questions that I wanted to bring tonight, and I know that John Philip has a couple of final comments.